Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So today I want to talk about Gear 4th Tankman. Now there are two things really that I want to talk about, but when I initially made the video to talk about both of them in one video, the video was just far too long. So we're going to separate it into two videos. The first of which is what I want to talk about is Gear 4th Tankman Explained. I want to explain what we've seen so far and all the little details which help us better understand how Tankman actually works and how it's different from Boundman or Bounceman. And then the second video, I want to go into future speculations for potential other, still yet to be revealed, forms of Gear 4th. While there could just be two forms of Gear 4th, and this would fulfill the condition many of us had that there would be alternative forms, there's the possibility that there is much more than that. But I won't be covering that in this video. First, let's explain Tankman. Now the first thing that I want to bring up is what I said in my first reaction, which is that yes, we have seen a new form of Gear 4th called Tankman. But it's not just Tankman, it's Tankman quote unquote full version. And while this could have many possible meanings, I think the most obvious thing that this could refer to is that at the time in which Luffy used Tankman, he was full. He had eaten to the point that he had turned obese. He even mentioned to Cracker that he wanted to show Cracker the power of his fullness. And so I really can't see this having any other meaning than the power of Luffy being extremely fat while in Gear 4th Tankman. So with this being said, yes, we have seen Gear 4th Tankman, but we've only seen an alternative form of it. So the original form, the normal form of Tankman, while being similar to what we've seen already, would also be different. There is actually meaning towards Luffy saying the power of his fullness. There's additional abilities or different abilities granted to him while being obese in Tankman's form. So I think it's important to explain each separately. So let's start off with full version. What exactly is the power of Luffy's fullness? I honestly think that we have a huge clue to help us deduce how full version is different from Tankman. And so this comes from a line from Cracker, in which he attacked Luffy's body while he was in Gear 4th Tankman full version. And he comments this, he says, "Is it hard or is it soft?" This is a unique property that we have not seen from Bounceman, and I'm doubtful that this would also be a property of Tankman in its regular form. Honestly, the softness that Cracker is referring to seems to me to directly refer to the fact that Luffy was obese at the time. Obviously, the hardness has to do with Luffy's haki, but for me, the softness has to do directly with Luffy's fat. Fat is incredibly soft. And so after Cracker attacked Luffy's body while in this form, he seemed to actually get sucked into Luffy so that he couldn't escape. And for me, this seemingly happened because Luffy was fat at the time. This has to do with the power of his fullness, the softness. While normally in a form of Gear 4th, Luffy is incredibly hard and bouncy, while he's in Gear 4th Tankman full version, he's incredibly hard and bouncy and soft. This fullness adds another property to Luffy's Gear 4th, which Luffy was able to use to prevent Cracker from escaping from his attack. While being soft, he absorbed Cracker into his body. But still being elastic and bouncy, his body wanted to return to its normal state, i.e. not have a huge Cracker-like impression within his body. So Cracker attacked him, got absorbed into the fats, and then due to elasticity, Luffy returned to his normal state. But before he could do that, Cracker had no way of escaping, being essentially trapped in Luffy's fat folds. And then of course you saw what happened after that, which is that Luffy then sent Cracker flying through his ultra hard Cracker biscuits, and at this point seemingly appears to have defeated Charlotte Cracker. And so honestly, I believe that full version added to Tankman is probably Luffy's strongest defensive technique that he's revealed in the story, perhaps even stronger defensively than normal Tank Man or regular Bound Man. I don't think that Luffy is particularly mobile while in this form, and I don't think that he can move well enough to actually attack an opponent. I think he's more of a sitting duck who can only really form attacks based on the other person attacking him while in this form. So essentially, his only real attack power in this form is redirecting an opponent's attacks upon themselves. But honestly guys, I don't think that we will ever see Tank Man full version again in the story. While it is possible that he could go into this form again, keeping in mind that Whole Cake Island is made out of food, Luffy could potentially again stuff himself to the point that he is obese and use this in a further point in this arc. I really don't see this sequence of events happening again. While stuffing himself during a fight and then repeatedly using Gear Force, it's apparent that he can make the battle last a lot longer than he normally would without doing this. And additionally, it seems to add a lot of defensive properties to his overall attacks. But again, it seems to come at the cost of his own mobility and then pure attack power. So for him to do something like this would severely handicap him, in my opinion, from fighting multiple opponents or participating in multiple battles in short succession. So yeah guys, I really don't see Tank Man full version appearing again. However, I do think that we will see Tank Man regular version again in the story, actually for the first time. So let's talk about Tank Man. What exactly composes Tank Man? What are its abilities, properties? How is it different from Bound Man or Bounce Man? And so this is kind of difficult to speculate, honestly. Since we've only seen full version, it's kind of hard to narrow down what exactly are the properties that are specific to Tank Man and what are the properties given from full version. And so I do think that there are a couple clues. And the first of which, the most obvious of which, is looking at Luffy's Haki while using Tank Man full version. So if we assume that full version, the main thing that comprises its uniqueness is Luffy being fat, then that would have nothing to do with Luffy's Haki. So whatever differences we see in Tank Man with its Haki when comparing it to Bounce Man would actually be properties specific to Tank Man and not a full version. So basically looking at his Haki and how it's different from Bound Man lets us sort of delve into the differences between Bound Man and Tank Man and therefore come up with some conclusions about Tank Man. So let's look at their Haki. And so the first thing and the most major difference between Bound Man and Tank Man is that in Bound Man, Luffy covers his feet in Haki. In addition to this, he also takes off his shoes. This was actually an odd panel at the time where we saw Luffy specifically take off his shoes for pretty much the first time in the story when he first went Bound Man in the Dressrosa arc against Doflamingo. But in Tank Man, we can see his legs, and his legs are not colored in like we would expect if he was using Haki on his legs. He also does not take off his shoes, so I think we can assume that in Tank Man, Luffy does not coat his feet and legs like he does in Bound Man, and I think this is important. And the first thing that this tells us, honestly, is that think about Bound Man as a whole. Why is it called Bound Man or Bounce Man? It's because Luffy is constantly bouncing in the form. We also have a clue from Doflamingo that when Luffy adds Haki to his rubber body while he's in Gear 4th, this increases Luffy's bounciness. It increases the elasticity of his body. And so covering his legs in Haki would increase the bounciness of his legs, and when it would explain why Bounce Man, while is just, he's just using the form, is constantly bouncing around and he can't control it. But if he's not covering his legs in Haki like he does in Tank Man, he would not bounce. And that is why Tank Man does not bounce. However, that is not the only difference in Haki distribution between the two forms of Gear 4th. There are other differences, and the main difference seems to be the location of the Haki on Luffy's upper torso. In Tank Man, we can see that Haki covers his stomach, the majority of his back, and his arms, not his chest and not his head. And then if we go to Bound Man or Bounce Man, the haki seems to be distributed mainly on his legs and on his arms and part of his back, but not his entire stomach or chest. And I believe this can be very easily explained, which is that look at Bounce Man. Where is the haki on his arms and on his legs? The two things that Luffy uses to attack. And then on the flip side, we look at Tank Man. Where is his haki? Not on his legs, it is on his arms, but the majority of his haki seems to be distributed to his stomach. What is the purpose of that? Defense. When thinking about the purpose of the haki in the first place, it vastly magnifies his elasticity. And Luffy has been shown to use this property in two ways. The first of which is to just increase his defense. When Doflamingo landed a blow on him while he was in Gear 4th, Luffy moved his haki to where Doflamingo was attacking, and Doflamingo found that his attack was not effective. But in addition to this, he also uses this elasticity to increase his attack power as well. But this would only apply to areas of his body that he actually uses to attack. Luffy has yet to show a stomach attack outside of what we saw in this last chapter from Tank Man Full version, and in general attacked with punches and kicks, so adding haki to his stomach in general would not provide offense for Luffy. Therefore, we can assume that the reason for him putting haki there is to improve his defense. So essentially, I think Luffy's placement of his haki in Tank Man proves the utility he has for this form, which is his, at this point, ultimate defensive technique that he can use regularly. However, I'm going to add an additional wrinkle to this whole conversation, which is that what are the two things that define Gear 4th? The first of which is Luffy's haki. With Gear 4th comes haki, and his ability to improve his elasticity using it. But there's another element as well, which is that Luffy blows air into his muscles. So Gear 4th can be defined in two parts, one part haki and one part air. And so it's clear that for creating Tank Man, Luffy adjusted the placement of his haki. However, there's also the possibility that he adjusted the placement of the air. Now guys, I'm going to be real with you. It is incredibly hard to prove that this happened because we did not see Tank Man. We saw Tank Man Full version. And in Full version, Luffy was already huge, right? He was already incredibly fat and big before he went into Tank Man. And so when we see Tank Man, it's very clear that he got bigger. But did he get proportionally bigger in one part of his body more so than another? I don't think we can prove this because we haven't really seen, a Gear 4th Bound Man Full version to really compare. However, I think logically speaking, we can speculate that Luffy may have done this. And so if he's using tank version, then where exactly would he place the air to possibly increase the effectiveness of the version? Keeping in mind that it is a defensive version, I think it's very possible that Luffy, rather than putting a lot of air into his arms and in general upper body like his chest as he appears to do in Bound Man, it's very possible that rather than have that air there, he puts the majority of the air in his stomach. One Piece logic goes as following: bigger equals stronger, even if it doesn't necessarily make any sense. And so, being a defensive version, Tank Man doesn't really have a lot of use for having air in his arms and in his chest, because he isn't actually planning on using those for attacks while using this form. The purpose is to absorb attacks. And so, if he increases the amount of air that he puts into his stomach, this would increase the overall size of his abdominal muscles, basically make his abs incredibly strong, and therefore this would increase the defensive effectiveness of this form. It would allow him to take blows that were even stronger better. So if we were imagining the real version of Tank Man that we have not seen yet, I think we could look at it as sort of like a diamond, right? Bigger in the middle, smaller at the bottom and at the top, which is different from Bound Man, which is more like a triangle, an upside down triangle, which is bigger at the top and then gets progressively smaller as you get lower. So yeah guys, I think that this might have been obvious to some people. A lot of people had speculations similar to this that I read in the comments section, but I felt like a video of this type was necessary for the community in general. So let me know what you guys think about this video. And in preparation for my next video that I'll be doing on this topic, we still have at least one element that is necessary to create the trifecta of Gear 4th, which is that we have an offensive and we have a defensive version, but still a speed version would be necessary. And to be honest with you guys, I still think that we can look at my previous speculation about Gear 4th as a possibility for how Luffy could create a speed version. But I have another idea as well, which I'll share in this video. In addition to this, there's another idea which I want to throw out there as well, which is maybe there is no speed version. Maybe Bounced Man is the speed version while also being the strength version. But again, it's not really the defensive version, so perhaps there's a form that is sort of the perfect Gear 4th form. Both offense, defense, and speed at the same time. Lastly, there's the possibility that Bounced Man is the balanced version of Gear 4th. And so we have a defensive version and a balanced version, but there is a yet to be revealed super offensive version, which I also have ideas for as well. So look forward to that video. But yeah guys, I really hope that you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think. Like the video if you liked the video. I'd appreciate it if you subscribed, and as always dudes, have a wonderful day.